We are doing hip hinge today, so you'll need a light weight, so come and lie on your backs. Right. Get the light weight ready. So lay on your backs, feet hip distance apart. So we're going to work on our connection first of all, so we should be feeling it underneath both. Oh, just let me move the thing underneath both feet, underneath our lumbosacral junction, TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. So start down at your feet. We're just going to think about trying to get better connected by shifting the weight from side to side, because what we want to feel is nice and balanced between the left and right foot. So shift the weight from side to side until you feel like you've got better balance, and then you're just going to pause there. And then you're going to think about whereabouts you're feeling it on the foot. Are you feeling it on the outside of the foot, or are you feeling it on the inside of the foot? So we're going to think about that, and if you're feeling it more on the outside, we want to try and pull the inner arch down to the floor without lifting the outer arch. So try and keep the knees pointed towards the ceiling, try and keep your ankles neutral. Don't let your knees come in as you're trying to pull the inner arch down. If you're feeling it more on the inner arch, you're going to try and keep the inner arch in connection, but pull the outer arch down to the floor. So keeping the knees again pointed up to the ceiling, ankles neutral. So once we've got our feet, we're going to work our way up to the lumbosacral junction. And we're going to just start by trying to pull the spine away from the floor, going into an anterior pelvic tilt. And then we're just going to reverse peel that into the floor, and the pelvis is going to go into a posterior tilt. So anterior, posterior, lifting the spine away, lowering the spine towards the floor. So forwards and backwards. And then you're just going to pause in the midpoint between the two end ranges, where your lower back should be flat on the floor. There shouldn't be any gap, but it shouldn't be caved into the floor either. So now your lumbosacral junction should be feeling more connected. Then work the way up to the TL junction. So imagine your pelvis and rib cage are like the pages of a book. We're going to try and pull the pages closed so that we're out of this open book appearance with the rib flare and lumbar extension. So pull the rib cage and pelvis parallel with each other like you're closing the book, and you should feel more connection underneath your TL junction. Then move the way up to the shoulder blades, so they want to feel equal from side to side, the pressure underneath them. So again, you're just going to sort of shift your weight until you feel like you've got that connection. And then the shoulders themselves, we don't want to have elevated forward shoulders. We're just going to try and pull them back slightly, externally rotate them, and bring the shoulder blades down towards the back pocket. So we're activating round the back here, so we're pulling the shoulder blades down towards the back pockets. And then the back of the head wants to push straight back down towards the floor. So we're not letting the neck extend, and we're not letting it come forwards. It's going straight back down, and you'll feel those muscles at the front of the neck come alive a little bit more. Okay, so once we've got that connection, put one hand on your chest and one hand on your tummy. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time just getting the breath in the right order first of all. So as we breathe in, the hand on the tummy wants to lift, and as you breathe out, the hand on the tummy wants to lower. And we're trying not to let the hand on the chest move anywhere. So really focus on what's going on underneath those hands. So obviously you guys have done this before, so just use this time as a little bit of a meditation, just trying to switch your brain off from the world. Try not to think about anything that's been worrying you or stressing you out. Just focus on your breath. Focus on that hand on the tummy lifting and lowering on the breath in and out. Okay, so once you've got your breath in the right order, then put your hands around your waist, thumbs digging into those back muscles and the fingertips gripping around the front of the tummy, like the front of the abdomen. And we're going to try and create our 360-degree breath. So as we breathe in, you want to feel all those muscles expand around the waist. So front, back and sides equal. If you're struggling, grab hold, cough, so you want to do a big cough, feel the muscles expand, and then use that as a bit of a wake up for your brain to let your brain know where your muscles are. Break it down into sections if you need to, so think about the front muscles first of all. Think about pushing your fingertips up towards the ceiling with that expansion, that inhalation. And then once you've got the front part, dig your thumbs into your sides, and you're going to be breathing and pushing the thumbs outwards to the sides. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips, like you're blowing through a straw. Once you feel like you've got your side bit, grab hold of the back muscles. Cough again if you need to. Feel that expansion, and then think about those back muscles, trying to push your thumbs towards the floor as you breathe in. Do a couple more breaths, and then we're going to work on the brace. So now we've got the 360 breath, we're going to work on the brace. So we want to do a 360 breath in, and then before we take the breath out, you're going to create your outward pressure, like you're imagining that you're farting. So you're going to breathe in 360 degrees, and then before you take the breath out, create that outward pressure, and then try not to let the muscles relax as you're breathing out. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, like you're blowing through a straw. Just do a couple more breaths. So we're going to start with just doing some single leg alternating lifts. So this is a single leg hip hinge. So we're going to keep the lower back neutral. So lower back should stay flat on the floor and pelvis is going to stay neutral. So we're going to lift one leg, hinging through the hip, concentrating on making sure that the lower back and pelvis doesn't move, and then lower it down. Lift the opposite leg and lower it down. So trying to make sure that nothing's happening in the lower back or pelvis. This movement is just purely coming from the hip. So alternating sides at the minute, just single legs. Keep breathing 360 degrees. And then if you can, we're going to do some double leg lifts, but if you're struggling with your back and you can't do that at the minute, just keep on breathing 360 and doing your single legs. But if you can, you're going to create your 360 breath and then outward pressure, and before you lift your legs, keep that brace and then lift. And try not to let the pelvis tilt forward. So this movement again is just coming from the hip. And then lowering back down, keeping that pelvis as still as possible. So this movement is purely from the hip. Keep breathing 360, keeping that brace active. Do a couple more of these, and then you're going to take your legs up into your 3-month supine, feet over the hips, feet over the knees, so they're higher than the knees, ankles neutral, knees over the hips, hips externally rotated and can't even speak tonight, sorry guys, externally rotated and abducted. Again, if your lower back's not up to holding it in this position, you are going to just get a ball or a bench underneath your feet, and we're going to start doing some single leg toe taps, alternating sides. But if you're resting one leg, resting your leg up on something, just rest one leg, move it to the side sort of, and then you can just tap one leg on the floor. So you'll be doing the same side if your back's not too good, and resting the other leg on something. So single leg at the minute. Focusing that movement through the hip, making sure nothing's happening in the pelvis and the lower back. Keep creating your 360 breath. If you can, you're going to grab hold of your kettlebell or your lightweight, whatever you've got. Put it up into the ceiling and then single leg toe tap. So in one hand at the minute, again just focusing on that hinge at the hip, single leg hinging. Nice and controlled. Swap hands with the kettlebell or the lightweight. Just do one more each side. Pop the kettlebell down, just give your hip flexors a little rest, bring your knees into your chest. And then now what I want you to do is we're going to do our double leg toe taps, but only if your back can take it. If it can't, just keep on doing the single leg toe taps. If you can't do single leg toe taps, again, just keep your legs rested, or one leg rested, and just doing the single leg with one leg supported. So if you can though, double leg toe taps. Keep that 360 breath and that brace. And then if you can, grab hold of the kettlebell again, up to the ceiling with one hand, and we're tapping the toes. Put your hand on your tummy or on your pelvis and just feel what's happening. Just make sure that there's no movement there. Put it into the other hand, so just do a few on this side. Just do two more. Pop the kettlebell down, bring your knees in again, and then back up. Fingertips towards the ceiling. Lift your head slightly, and then you're just going to look to the direction that you're about to turn, and then start to roll really slowly, nice and controlled. Shoulders and pelvis connected, so they're moving at the same time, so you're not just throwing your shoulder back and then pelvis, or pelvis then shoulder. So everything's moving as one. Imagine you've got a Lego body. Then go the opposite way. Make sure you've got your nice straight spine, so you're not banana-ing. If you want to, when you come back into the middle, you can add in either a single leg or a double leg toe tap, then roll to the opposite side, or you can just carry on doing the rolling without the toe tap, that's absolutely fine. Do one more each side, and then roll up into your lower oblique sit. So from your lower oblique sit, bring your knees together. So you're going to have like an angle at your hip, shoulder active, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to extend the hips and lift the bum off the floor. And then we're going to flex the hip and lower the bum to the floor. So again, this is controlled, so we're trying not to let the pelvis tilt as we're going. So extend the hips and flex. Keep breathing 360, so lifting and lowering. Keep that lower shoulder active, try not to let the shoulder push forwards, because like everything, these exercises are global exercises, so even though we're working on the hip hinge, we are working on the shoulder stability, as well as deep neck flexor activation, as well as everything else. Do one more, and then lower down. Come up into a high oblique sit, and then bring that back foot forwards so that it allows you've got some space for your hips, because otherwise you're a bit cramped here. So bring the leg round, and then again we're just going to hinge the hip up. So we're extending the hip and then lower it back down. And up and down. When you extend the hip, try not to overextend. So you don't want to just extend through the lower back. So we're keeping that lower back neutral. Just do 2 more. Again, shoulder active. Okay, bring the legs into that oblique sit. Rotate round up into your tall sit. Nice and long spine, so try not to be flexed. And we're just going to, again, hinge the hips back, so we're extending through the hip, keeping the spine neutral. And come forwards. And back. So really slow and controlled movement. Try and keep nice and upright through the back. And try not to let the pelvis move anterior or posterior. So if you're just trying to keep everything solid through here, and we're just lowering down through hip extension and coming back up through hip flexion. Keep breathing 360 degrees. Do one more if you can. And then rotate round to the opposite way. Into your lower oblique sit. Bring your knees together again. Hip at an angle, and we're just going to be extending the hip and lowering back down, so flexing the hip. So extending and lifting the bum off the floor, flexing and lowering back down. So keep doing that. Make sure again you don't overextend the lower back when you're extending your hip. So just have a feel of what's happening in your pelvis and lower back. Just do 2 more in this position. And then lower your hip. Come up into high oblique sit. Bring that back leg forwards in front of the other leg. And again, we're going to be extending the hips and flexing and lowering back down. Keep the shoulders active. Again, we don't want to extend the lower back as we're coming up. Just do a few more of these. Okay, back into your high oblique sit. Bring your knees up to the ceiling, rotate around the opposite way, and then we're just going to do some oblique sit lifts. So if you do need a book or something underneath your bum so that you don't just throw yourself up, but we're going to just work on the hinge today. So we're in this oblique sit. We're going to make sure you've got your neutral spine, or try your best to have a neutral spine nice and upright, and then you're just going to flex your hip forwards and then lift. Try not to fully extend the lower back, and then before you lower down you're going to flex again, so flexing and lower down. Again, flex forwards, up, and flex, and down. Come forwards and up, forwards, down. If you want to, you can add a little bit of weight, but if you want to just keep on going with the movement, that's fine. Don't push it if you don't want to, but if you want to add the weight, you're just flexing, up, flex, down. Make sure you go really steady when you are lowering yourself back down. Don't just fall and collapse, because you're just going to end up hurting your knees. So that's where the block can come in handy if you need to. So a book or a block, you can just put it underneath your knee, so then you've not got as far to go with the lifting and lowering. So you're not going to land as heavily. Do a couple more on this side. Okay, put the kettlebell down a sec. We're going to rotate round to the opposite direction. So knees up to the ceiling, knees round the other way. And again, we're going to work on hinging first, so nice and upright, flex forwards, lift, flex, lower back down, flex, up, flex, slowly lower down. And then again, when I say, don't fully extend the lower back as you're coming up. If you want now, grab hold of your weight and flex forwards, lift, flex, down. Again, you don't have to use the weight, you can just work on the movement. Just do a couple more on this side. Pop the kettlebell down. We're going to put the hand down, bring the leg round into your tripod. Okay? So we're going to just do some Making sure we're nice and long through the spine, so you're not rounded through here. Hands flat on the floor, or if you need to get something underneath your hands to lift you up, that's fine. And we're gonna hinge the hips backwards, so rocking backwards through the hip, trying to keep nice and upright through the spine, and then come forwards, extend the hip, and then hinge in this high kneel position, and then extending the hip back up, hands back down, so flexing through the hip, and then hinge backwards in your tripod. Back forwards, up into high kneel, hinge backwards in your high kneel, and then back up, so extending the hip. So just in your own time, go through that little movement. It's quite tough on your quad. So down into your tripod, tripod hinge, back up, open your hip into your high kneel, close your hip into your high kneel hinge, open your hip back up, all the while keeping control of what's happening in the pelvis. So we're trying not to overextend or starting to round. Just do one more set, so down into tripod, hinge, up into high kneel, hinge. Put one hand down, bring that front leg back into your oblique sit again. Rotate round the opposite direction, and then we're going to go up into the tripod and do that same thing on this other side. So tripod hinge, up, open your hip into your high kneel, and close the hip into your high kneel hinge. Oh, I've got a cramp in my foot. Open your hip up, close it down into tripod, tripod hinge, open up into high kneel, close into hinge. So just in your own time now, just do that little sequence. Focus on your breathing, so keep thinking about your 360 breath. Just do a couple more. Okay, come up into your high kneel on this side. Make sure we're not too narrow with that foot. Foot to the side. Neutral pelvis. Pelvis level with the floor. Arms up. Curl the back foot under. We're just in your own time going to go into our stand. So try and lean into it. So you're going to hinge into that position, so leaning forwards, and then stand. And then take that foot back and And keep the pelvis level with the floor, neutral spine, lower down. So just in your own time now, just do a few of these. High kneel to stand, stand to high kneel. Make sure when you bring your leg back, you're not too narrow. So nice and wide. Reset the pelvis every time. Okay, just do one more on this side. Okay, so from this high kneel, we're gonna open the hips and then rotate round the opposite direction. Open the hip, rotate the opposite direction. So imagine you've got your ball in your hands. Side to side. And then go on to the opposite high kneel. Foot not too narrow, foot out to the side. Pelvis level with the floor. Neutral spine. And now in your own time, you're just gonna lean into it and stand. And back. Pelvis level with the floor, knee tracking second and third toe. Keep focusing on your breath. Nice and wide with that step back. Make sure you've got the pelvis level before you lower down to the floor. Just do one more on this side. Lower down. Pop your hands on the floor into your tripod. Bring that front leg back into your bear, down into quadruped, then down into low quadruped. And we're just going to do some low quadruped hinges. So find your neutral pelvis, so rock your pelvis backwards and forwards. Make sure your knees aren't too narrow. Elbows in line with the ears, push the floor away with the forearms. Shoulders active. Try and make sure your spine is nice and long. So if you need to, if you're rounded, pull the spine down towards the floor. If you're flatter through your upper back, push the floor away and try and lengthen the neck. And then we're going to hinge. So flexing the hips backwards, so moving the weight backwards. Keeping control of the lower back and pelvis. And then come out of it. So just in your own time now, just forwards and backwards, keeping control of your pelvis and lower back. So the slower you go, the more controlled you're going to be. You can think about those little micro movements that happen. Keep going backwards and forwards. bring the hands a little bit wider, because you're going to push up into your quadruped. Make sure you've got your neutral. You're going to hinge backwards in your quadruped. And then come forwards, lower your forearms down again into your low quadruped and hinge the hips backwards again. And then come forwards, up into quadruped, keeping that neutral spine, and then hinge. And then up. Elbows down, hinge the hips, forwards, up, go backwards. Just do one more of these, so we're going down onto the forearms, hinging backwards, forwards, up into quadruped again, and now we're just going to do some simple quadruped hinges, just really focusing on keeping that control, so neutral spine, upper back, down towards the floor if you're rounded, and nice and long if you're a bit flatter, so push the floor away, and then we're hinging backwards. So flexing the hips, controlling the movement in the pelvis, and forwards, and back, forwards, just in your own time, backwards and forwards, controlling that movement. And then before you go into your bear, come back into your quadruped, reset your pelvis, reset your lower back, reset your upper back, reset your shoulders, reset your neck. Create your 360 breath and your brace. Curl the feet under and lift the bum in the air. I'm going to take my hands a little bit further forwards. And we're just going to hinge backwards and forwards, so hinging through the hip. So lift the bum a bit higher into the air if you need to, and then come forwards. Trying to keep that control through the pelvis and lower back. And hinge back. We're not going to do as many of these because these are tougher to hold. Do one more. Down. Give your legs a little shake out. Arms a little shake out if you need to. Again, find neutral. Neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Back feet under, or both feet under. Lift the bum in the air. Hinge your hips backwards, folding in the hip, walk your hands backwards into your squat. Try and be nice and upright if you can. And then as we come up out of it, make sure the pelvis doesn't tilt forwards. And we're just in our own times, going to do some squatting. So, feet comfortable distance, find your neutral, neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, create your breath, and then slowly lower down. Think about what's happening in your pelvis and the lower back, and then as we come up out of it, control that position. So in your own time, just slowly down, and slowly up. And down. And up. Every time, reset the pelvis. Hold the front and back of the back and the tummy so you can feel if there's any movement as you go down. And then the same as you come up. So just do a couple more of these.